Okay, guys, I don't know if I'm going to be prepared for this. This is, we're live, right? You're there, I'm here, and we've been fighting about the topic for today's live stream, and it is what it is. It is what it is. We're having fun here. Kyle's up here because Ryan's downstairs. Hey, Kyle. Because Ryan's downstairs dealing with some folks in the store and
dealing with them.
He's dealing with them, and then Aaron's fussing with the camera there, and house cleaning duties. Yeah, super chat's probably running. If you want to help us that way, that's super. If you are a Patreon supporter, thank you so much for that. And if you're interested in that, you can check out our Patreon link down in the description section of this video. And what else is there, Aaron? Oh, there's a PayPal link. What?
Sold out of the month.
So yeah, wow. Well, we didn't. I still got one. So the nutmeg mugs, I still have one here on the set, but you guys bought them all. Thank you so much for being interested in the nutmeg mugs, supporting us that way. We'll have one more batch, I think, of these mugs coming in, and then we'll probably work on something else. And we've got some throwback mugs coming with the old logo on them, kind of tweaked. Really, really nice mugs coming in. We changed the color batch this time, so that should be real fun. Those will be coming soon. Ryan's working on a new t-shirt design. I haven't seen it yet. We'll see how that works out. So having a lot of fun. If you've got questions, we'll be doing questions today. You can, you might want to hold them for a little bit because...
Yeah, I told them to wait till we started doing them.
But this
they get lost.
This topic today is, I was reading, which is always painful sometimes. I love reading the comments because there's always so many wonderful comments, and they're always helpful for me to understand how people are sort of interpreting the videos, right? And but this Thursday's video, working through the comments, I was having a little bit of, it's like, okay, what's going on, guys? Why are you sort of misinterpreting the intention here of, number one, the books, the journal, sort of reading and studying these journals? They're so important, and they're not only, they're important, they're just as important for what's wrong in the journal as what's right. This isn't someone's modern interpretation of what happened 300 years ago or 250 years ago. This is somebody's interpretation from 250 years ago. But we have to remember the fun part is understanding and reading his biases right into the reading. And we can all take that. We can all see this guy. We can even put him into a virtual movie in our head, and he's speaking these things, or he's writing these down, and you can watch him, and you can all of a sudden, it's like, oh no, I think I get this guy. And the great part is you continue to hear this inner monologue, this inner voice of this character as he's a real guy in South Carolina. He's riding along, and we can really start to get a picture of his character. And so we get as much information about him in these writings as what he's writing about. But even if we see these people in South Carolina through the cloudy lens of Charles Woodmason, we still get a painting of him, right? We still get to see these people in South Carolina. We have to understand the lens that we're watching them through and reading them through. Very, very true. We can't just take this guy's reading as if it is completely neutral. In fact, nobody's writing is going to be completely neutral, but at least it gives us something to look at instead of making it up out of whole cloth, which is what we do when we think of somebody back in history or a particular a place in history. We immediately conjure up ideas in our own minds, piecing and cobbling together out of movies or, I don't know, textbooks and whatnot. We collect these people together and we play that little movie in our head about what history's like. that is probably, well, it might be good at times. It might be fairly accurate. Likely it isn't accurate at all. And at least we can go back and read some of these journals, and we've got an idea about who's writing it. We've got an idea about, his biases. The person who collected and edited this does have great annotations. In fact, we had a good question that came in. And it was, these aren't in order anymore. I had a really good question picked out, and the sum of the question was something like, yes, here we go. Would you recommend this book for a European without proper knowledge of American history of this period? Was it annotated? Love the content. Without proper knowledge, that sort of, answers the question without even, no, I wouldn't recommend it to somebody who had absolutely no concept about what's going on in American history. But everyone's got at least some kind of context. There is a lot of, not annotation, but certainly interpretation, introduction, preface in this. The person who put together this book did an excellent job of explaining Charles Wood Mason to us and giving us some background information. So that part is excellent. So not only do we get the journal, which we could read by itself and not use any of that interpretive material, but there's a bunch there. So it's a really good book. Unfortunately, it isn't in sort of mainstream publishing, what's in print right now. It's a fairly expensive book. I wish there was, this great inexpensive copy, and I could put a copy into everyone's hands who was interested in this topic, because it is a excellent book on this kind of topic and looking into these kind of people. I'm going to take a drink.
Actually, while you're taking a drink,
yeah.
I want to say thanks to David. I think it's Dinelli. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Dinelli. $10 donation. Thank you. Says, great work. Keep up the great work. Did you catch Nicholas Cresswell finding a mastodon skeleton in the salt spring when he was headed west?
Yeah. There's in Nicholas Cresswell's journal, when he is going into the back woods. I think it's a Big Bone Lick or an area in Kentucky where there is this sort of mastodon graveyard, and at the time, in the time period when he went through, the bones were just laying all over the place. So all these, like an elephant graveyard, except it's a mastodon graveyard, and just I can't imagine what it would have been like to go. Well, number one, to be stumbling through, just intense wilderness, and then boom, you walk into this like a wonder of the world, running into a spot like this, a natural wonder of the world, not a man-made wonder of the world, but one of these places that it must have been just magical to, except he was probably starving at the time and had intestinal parasites or whatever, but must have been amazing. If you read a bunch of these guys, real similar characters to Nicholas Cresswell, real similar time period, they were also running into like Indian mounds and, abandoned Indian cities from 200 and 300 years prior to that. So they were discovering all these prehistory things for themselves, sort of firsthand. It truly must have been. It is a great part of the book, and that one is definitely a must read. The Nicholas Cresswell journals.
We got another
Yes.
donation from Candace Dainty, $5. No comment, just $5.
Thank you, Candace, so much.
$2 from Redneck Barbie.
Redneck Barbie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. I do have just no. I think I'll let you guys speak on this for a little bit about your thoughts on this particular journal and the idea of reading these things and how we need to kind of get in here. I know it's a little hard to do this two-way communication, but I really want to hear a little bit about what you guys are thinking about this kind of topic. Related, I don't have the close-up camera here. I wish I did. Here in my hand, I've got, related to this this journal, Many times he talks about going into a particular setting and how many communicants there were in that setting. He would have, a church service, and there might be 100 or 200 or 500 people there at a time. But there were only a very, very small number of people who would take communion that he thought were, that he thought were part of the church in that way. And the churches many times had kind of a special deal around communion. Sometimes they would only have it like once a year, and to take communion, you had to have a communion token. And that's one of the things you can still find. You can find these on eBay or like coin stores that have, ancient or old tokens. And here's a communion token. I think this one is dated 1802 from I think this is from a Glasgow. So this was from a Scottish, probably a Presbyterian church, and they have these little communion tokens. And so earlier in the year, the church people would come around, the pastor or whoever, and you would get one of these tokens so that the next time communion was being given, you could take communion. You'd have to bring your token and hand it to them, and then you could take communion. Interesting thing that's going on there in the 18th century, and one of those things that we can find sort of a physical kind of reference to that. So I thought that was really interesting.
Hey, John.
Yes.
They want to see that dude on the shelf.
The dude on that dude on the shelf?
Yeah. The action figure on the shelf.
Well, he's ancient. He's been sitting around in the office for probably 30 years. He doesn't have, I don't know where he came from, but he's based on those little, if you've seen them, you have a little stick or a little spring board, and then you have the little dancing figures. And this is just a straight dancer. He doesn't have, his legs aren't articulated, but they have a little stick in their back, and then you'd hit the board, and the little guy would dance, and his arms would flop around. And it's a very common thing. You actually see them in 18th century illustrations. People would be playing instruments in the street, probably for money, and sometimes they would have these little dancing figures, and this is just kind of based on that, soldier based on that. There he goes. He's back on the table. Did you have any particular thing for me, Kyle?
A couple questions. Keem Lover wants to know, how do you get access to all these materials, such as 18th century books?
There are lots of wonderful book recommendation lists, and we just hunt and hunt. We'll go digging online with just regular lists. You can just dig in Amazon sometimes. You can find free ones by going through Google Books, so books.google.com, and you can type in journal or adventures or whatever, and then actually have it restrict the time frame. It's one of those special little things you have to do. You have to go to tools. I've got a tutorial about how to do it someplace online in YouTube, but I don't know where that's at. But maybe we could find that link and put it in here. Anyway, you can restrict the time frame and have it just pull out books from, say, a lot of times I'll do a search from 1700 to 1800, and then you can find every book that refers to X within that time period, free online PDF versions of these books. It's a great way to do research. It's not the perfect tool, because I know a lot of times I'll know there's a topic inside of a particular book. I'll just go there and say, I'll search for that topic and see if it pops up, and no, it doesn't, even though I know it's in that book. Still, excellent tool. If you're interested, Aaron, can you put a link to the book recommendation page on our website? You know how to find that?
I think so.
It's in that kind of lower bar right above the. We've got a book recommendation page. It's just full of Amazon links to books of topics. So if you're interested, we do sell some books on our website, but a very, very small quantity of books. Most of them are period bound in a period manner. But if you're looking for a modern book, like this one. Amazon's the best place to go, and we got a giant list of books. So if you go to that book recommendation page, you'll find the link for you. That's a good way to find them. Anything else?
L. Allen wants to know, was there anything in the journals you've read that just caught you by surprise?
Well, I mean, every journal has something that catches me by surprise. Sometimes the journals are pretty dry reading and they talk about mundane things over and over again, and you wonder why anybody picked this particular journal out to read or to publish. But most of the time they've got some really, really interesting tidbits that kind of open up a new avenue. Like I was really, really surprised that Woodmason in this particular book managed to bring out the idea that these folks in the backcountry of South Carolina had no utensils. And I've read that in some other journal someplace else too. Somebody was traveling from one place to another. They said they stopped and they had like one spoon in the whole house. And the most interesting thing I thought is he actually talks about them drinking out of gourds. And it's one of the things we actually carry gourd bowls. But gourds are actually a really, really great device for drinking out of because they're so very light and they're very sturdy. They are a little difficult to clean out at times, but if you're just drinking water or something like that, excellent vessel. Woodmason should have carried one of these on his horse because it didn't weigh anything compared to taking along his heavy pewter mug. So, but every journal seems to have something, like the Cresswell one, where he talks about running into the Mastodon graveyard, and you're just, blown away by that. Most of them have some little tidbit, at least one little thing that really sets you off.
I got a donation from Terry Louise, and I cannot pronounce the second part of this, but and I don't know what symbol that is. Euro, maybe?
Okay.
I don't know. But anyway.
Thank you for that.
They wanted to know if we're going to do Irish immigrants and the impact they had on the U.S. in a video.
Well, right here in this one, a lot of the folks that he's talking about in the backwoods here are Scottish immigrants. They're Irish immigrants. Some of them are coming from Northern Ireland, but there's a lot of impact by the Irish and the Scottish in this time period. So is one of those great topics, and one that I would love to find a particular person to kind of connect with on that. Actually, where we need to do some more work with Maggie, Carol Jarbo. She does a whole presentation on Irish indentured servants. So that's a great place, a great thing that you'll probably be seeing in the future. I know I actually have a piece recorded with her that we shot at Martin Station, but the footage wasn't up to snuff. So we're going to have to redo that. But I like redoing those in the future sometimes because it's going to be so much better when we do get a chance to do it like we want to do it. So, yes, hopefully that's a topic we can do.
That's the same lady who was in the grave robber one. Yeah, she's awesome.
Extraordinary person. Yes.
Yeah.
You have anything for me, Kyle?
I do. Let's see. Joe Dudit wants to know, how reliable are the dates and places in the historical journals?
How reliable the dates and it depends on the person and when they wrote it. A lot of them are fairly accurate. If you go through the annotations on the Joseph Plum Martin book, now he wrote most of that journal or all of that journal after the fact. Many years later, in the 19th century, he wrote that. And he obviously, he goes through kind of day to day at times, and he does an actually very, very good job of locking those down in the time period pretty well. So I have not seen a lot of, being wrong in that way. Now, there are times, especially in these journals, this one's really good, Through So Many Dangers. This one is Robert Kirk, and this is French and Indian War. He gets captured by Native Americans. He spends a good deal of time with them. He escapes eventually. He was in the military before. He ends up back in the military, and so part of this journal is pre-military, or before he's captured. Then he saw this captured stuff, and then after the fact. And there's obvious sections of this book. Now, I didn't interpret this. The authors who edited this and annotated this, he added some pieces in that weren't his firsthand information. He sort of got it from somebody else's firsthand information about particular Native American practices or something like that. I don't know exactly. I think it was a section about snowshoes or something, and they said, well, this was just taken verbatim out of some other piece. You'll find that quite often. I don't know. You'll find it often, I'll say it like that, in some of these journals. Thankfully, many times, if you've got a modern one with some annotations in it, you can see where that's happened. But generally, I think they're quite reliable in what they have in them.
Tai Chi wants to know, I'm wondering about some 18th century dances. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Wow. No. Unfortunately, I've got nothing on my dance card for you there. There is a lot of good dance information that's out there. It's not something that I've spent a lot of time in. There's all these wonderful illustrations of dances. There's all this wonderful dance music. The Vickers thing is all basically dance music. And I think there's a lot of good instruction on that. And there's some people that really just concentrate on that kind of thing. And unfortunately, I'm not a big dancer, so sorry about that.
Hey, John, I'm going to throw one. This is one that I'm throwing out at you. This is one I found on the channel prior, and I thought it was kind of interesting.
Okay.
It's stuff that we've kind of talked about in the past. This person says, I would love reenacting, but the reenactors are too old and cranky. Reenacting needs new blood, which is a challenge. Since public schools barely teach history anymore. I don't know about that. But anyway, yeah, that's something that we've talked about a lot, getting new people excited about living history. You want to speak on that a little bit?
I think there's more and more of that than you might realize. More and more young folks being interested in that and doing it. And it just has to do with, basically, I think, as the younger generations come in, they actually build their own groups instead of, hey, now, be good back there. They kind of build their own groups as they come in. And I think there's actually a whole generation of younger reenactors out there. You just don't find them in quite the same place. You might have to do some digging on Instagram or some other of those places where they kind of congregate. And I don't know. I don't know what to say about that, except that I know there are lots of younger people interested in doing reenacting, and they do it in a little different way. So I'm excited to see what this next generation does with living history, and I think there's going to be a different take on it. It's continually changing and doing some really interesting and good things. So that's what I have to say about that.
Edward Clark wants to know what were the let me try that again. Members of Townsends living up to 18th century, like who participates here?
Who participates? You're talking about employees at James Townsend.
Yes.
I don't know what. Say what? Yeah, no. Aaron doesn't dress up funny unless
I've never seen you dress
for a
up,
movie. There are a few select of us that go out all the time, but for I will say the majority of folks at James Townsend and Son is their job. They're making stuff. They're doing a job, and so they go home and they live their normal life, and they don't go out to events because I don't force them to, although I probably should. Kyle's been to events.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
Ryan goes out with me to different events, so we have a lot of fun with that. And Kevin's been out to events, so we've had, some folks are, really get involved in that and do that, and other folks, they just make the stuff or do the job.
Going back to the journals, Andrew Shook, he actually has one he's throwing out there for you, John. It's called it's Henry Timberlake's journal from 1762.
Okay.
So he said he could.
You want to
check
write that
one
down
out.
for me so I can
I totally will.
remember that? Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, hold on. He meant, what were the members of the Townsend family doing in the 18th century? What were their jobs?
Okay.
Not the employees.
There we go. I was wondering. It's like,
Thanks for making me feel more like an idiot. Thank you.
I was wondering. It's like, do they mean people know? Okay. You know what? I don't have a lot of great information on my father's side that goes back very far that I've looked at recently. So Townsends, I couldn't tell you that. Now, I just recently have been going through information for my mother's side, and I do have some dates. I think some of the earliest ones were coming in the 1740s there's a lot of German, there's a lot of Northern European, Scandinavian coming in on my mother's side, but I don't know the actual occupations right off the top of my head. So I'll try to do some more digging on that one. You guys asking tough questions.
Want to do a donation real quick?
Yes.
I lost it. There's so many comments. Kayla May, $2. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla May.
Is the period clothing comfortable in your opinion?
Be
honest.
Yeah, I certainly don't have any. I don't tend to be a person who complains a lot about my clothes, so I find them comfortable. I'm a kind of a cold-blooded person. I'm not hot all the time, so wearing wool coats in the summertime doesn't bother me that much. Some people have a lot of issue with that, and it's interesting. That kind of brings a topic up. One of the questions that was actually on the video itself from the Charles Woodmason talked about the clothing, because Charles Woodmason was talking about the clothing a lot and how these folks in South Carolina, they just, they weren't wearing the clothes they were supposed to be wearing. I printed out too much stuff. But he made a really good point. Was saying, well, maybe the folks in South Carolina weren't wearing a lot of clothes because it was too hot. And Charles Woodmason does bring up that topic. He actually says, number one, that one of the reasons why they don't have a lot of clothes is because they can't afford it. They don't have the clothing. It's not available to them, even if they had the money, because there aren't any stores. But he also talks about it being so hot that he understands why some of them aren't wearing as many clothes as proper. And that's one of the other issues that's going on in the 18th century. There is unlike today, there's proper clothing to wear. And if you aren't wearing a coat and a vest underneath that and a shirt and a pair of knee breeches and a pair of stockings and a pair of shoes and a hat on your head, you are not dressed properly. I don't care what the weather is. And so there is a portion of the population that looks down upon anybody that's not wearing the proper layers of clothing. When you're in the backwoods and and it's also true for workmen that when you were in a working situation, sometimes you weren't wearing all those number of layers. You certainly see paintings of farmers and blacksmiths, and they're not wearing a coat. In the summertime, you're working at the forge, you might just have a shirt on. Occasionally, you'll even see somebody without their shirt on. It's a rarity, but maybe they don't have a neckcloth on like they should, or I don't have my neckcloth on. That's weird. It's over there. Anyway, that's strange.
Whoops.
Yeah.
I want to do a donation real quick from
Yeah.
Mitch, $20. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great show. Albion Seed, 4 British Folkways in America is also a good read.
Right. I've got it on my desk right now. I'm surprised it's not in the stack here. Yeah. Thank you for that. So now I even forgot what the original question was. So I'll let Kyle go back and give me a real question.
David Maxey, are the journals from just average day people or high class people all the time?
Most of the time you're going to find journals from people in higher levels of society, but the ones you find of common people are all that much more precious for that. And I mean, you know, here's Charles Wood Mason. He's pretty high up in society. So, but even then, it's interesting to see what these people are like from his point of view. Again, this might tell us more about Charles Wood Mason and his thought process than it does about the people he's talking about. But truly, truly interesting reading. Now, that's the problem with, say, finding something like a sailor's journal, a sailor, because most of them, number one, they don't have time to keep a journal, and they probably aren't the kind of person who would keep a journal in the first place. So, you know, you don't find as many common people, you know, journals. Soldiers, yeah, sometimes. Officers, definitely. That's like for the sailor point of view. That's why Dana's 2 Years Before the Mast is such a great journal, because he wrote that from a common sailor's point of view. It's early 19th century, but wonderful book about living the life of a sailor from somebody who was up a little bit higher up in society, but becomes a sailor for the experience and for the health reasons. Just like Nicholas Creswell, you should go out on a long ocean voyage because it's healthy for you. Eating this tight, you know, highly restrictive diet of things that probably aren't good for you. And anyway, I'm ready.
Okay. A donation for $5 from Rob Sadler.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Rob.
that's easy name. I don't know why. Yeah, thank you. Says, love the show. Thank you, John and Townsend staff, for being so amazing. Any plans to make Paul's second dream of cooking squirrel come true?
Do I have to give you guys the secret?
Yes.
Okay, so the secret is that the reason why you haven't seen a squirrel or a venison recipe is because I don't happen to have any squirrel or venison on me. And I actually have tapped into a couple local sources, but I haven't come up with any of the raw materials for doing an episode on squirrel or venison. Now, squirrel, you don't find it mentioned too often in cookbooks. Okay, you don't find it mentioned in 18th century cookbooks. But venison certainly is. So when I have the raw materials, I will gladly do an episode on squirrel or venison.
I got a great question here, and Aaron's going to love it. Piney Strong asks, how can I get the movie you made? I think it was called Crimson Tide.
Let's wrap up the live stream.
Okay, we're done. See you guys later.
Talk about bees. We talked about beekeeping in the last one.
Yeah.
Everybody's asking about bees again. I don't know. We did it in the last one.
Bees are interesting. They're fun.
Yeah.
Anyways, real question.
Oh,
Jack Brock wants to know, have you ever been to Colonial Williamsburg?
yes, but it's been several years since I've been to Colonial Williamsburg. So, such a beautiful place. You know, wonderful location. So, and museum, just wow. And apparently, the collection underneath the museum, that's where you really want to go, and that's you're not going to get there.
Here's here's an interesting one. Was there such a thing as a garbage man in the 18th century? Yeah, what was the trash like? The trash situation.
Well, I don't know about trash, but you want to know about the night soil man. Oh, yeah. There was that. Okay, we're talking. This research is easier to find for, say, like London or Great Britain in that time period. But you've got people that are dealing with sewage. That's their job. I mean, carrying it in buckets and using it for industrial purposes. So you also have people that buy and sell rags and old pieces of metal. So they had big time recycling going on in the 18th century. Recycling like we can't even imagine. I don't think there was that much trash to get rid of, because somebody was going to take whatever you had and turn it to good purposes. So we live in a disposable society. They did not live in a disposable society. So I think that's a quick, short answer. I wish I had more details for you on that. Yeah. It is.
Fish says Night Soil Man should be Marvel's next superhero.
I'm Night Soil Man. And he's carrying a bucket of whatever. Anyway.
Classic Rock lives on. Do you have any information on historical martial arts? He says that he's read that George Washington played a game called Collar and Elbow.
I have nothing on that, and I'm highly interested in that.
There was another part of his question he asked a little later. He said that he also read that they played a game called Rough and Tumble, and it was like 18th century UFC.
Whoa! That sounds like some more research. I mean, obviously, you could tell from the thumbnail, he's got the word, the thumbnail, that boxing was a thing in 18th century England, and certainly became a thing in North America in the 19th century. So I can imagine these other things going on. I don't know, I guess martial arts is a word that we could use for it. I'm not sure exactly what they would call it, but certainly sounds very interesting.
Alistair Lee wants to know, how much did it cost to have a painting portrait done?
Great topic. I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can find I can see what I can find for some information like that. Sometimes you can find especially helpful things about that going on in North America from newspaper advertisements. So you can see people advertising that they will do that sort of a thing. But I suppose it totally depends on how good a portrait you want of yourself. So I could do you a portrait, it might not cost very much. Stick figures and all that.
William Robinson wants to know, what's your favorite object on the shelf behind you?
I just picked things out because I thought they looked like fun. This is a thing that I've wanted to produce. So this is a 19th century dark lantern. But like when Maggie did the grave robber video, and she was talking about lighting, and a night lantern or a dark lantern is something that you would have wanted in the 18th century for that kind of a job. Now this guy's got an oil lamp in it, but you can imagine a candle lantern like this, and if you look closely, I don't know if you can see it, but this one has a slide on the inside. This is why it's a dark lantern. You can turn it off so it's dark, and then and this magnifying lens, of course, focuses the light. So you've got this focused flashlight of the 18th century, and you sneak up on somebody and you whip it open, and you can catch somebody in the act, and you'll find 18th century illustrations of policemen and other watchmen, all kinds of folks. There's even a painting of in Diderot's, it's just a regular engraving, and it's a sword fight, and one of these guys has one of these lanterns in one hand. He's like blinding his enemy while he's poking him with the sword. That's probably my favorite thing on the shelf. A dark lantern. Everybody needs one.
Yeah, show him the sword Some people are asking about the sword behind you.
Oh, it's a sword. It just happens to be. This is just a reproduction. I think it's actually a Civil War sword.
Oh shoot! Sorry.
Good one, Aaron.
Yeah. It's a sword, though. I've got one down in my office. It's actually an 18th century sword with an ivory handle and everything. Oh, well.
Next time.
Yeah, you'll have to see that next time.
Oh, look, Alistair Lee again. What military memoirs from the period would be suited to get a better understanding of the time? Military memoir.
Well, I mean, if you haven't read the Joseph Plum Martin Private Yankee Doodle book, that's a memoir, Revolutionary War, and it's an excellent book for that. I'm still I'm still digging through my my reading list here, so that's the only one that just pops off the top of my head for Revolutionary War. And there's the German one. I don't have that one here. It's down in my office. The Dola Hessian Journal is another one from that sort of point of view. And in fact, we're working on one right now, making it available. 3 different Hessian journals that are different from that particular one, bound together in a book. We're working on a couple of sort of printed versions of period available books, so look for that soon. There's another one, and it's just not coming into the top of my head. I'll think about that. If you look in that book recommendation page, you may find some other ones for that topic.
Real quick, somebody was asking, when will the music event that you postponed be rescheduled? Any updates on that?
Yes, the update is I've got an email in my inbox right now. I'm supposed to get back with Hillary and set the date. I should be on the phone right now, but I'm not. I'm doing this live stream. I will have that information available for you next week.
Also, if you go back to the video we did, what day was that?
We do so many.
Yeah, we do so many. Anyway, the video coming up Monday will have
Some
one of the new songs in it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Monday's cooking episode, which will be, I'm not going to tell you.
It's awesome.
It's awesome.
Awesome.
And it'll have some of that new music in it. And we're excited about that
Yeah,
event.
the record's great.
Yes. See, we've heard it.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see, Bet's Stump asked, does John have any acorn flour recipes on hand that he could share?
No, I don't. Acorn flour is one of another really interesting topics. I have not processed any acorn flour, and the kind of acorns that I have on my ground are the kind that need a lot of processing. There's some acorns that have very little tannins in them, and so you can almost use them without any great processing. I think chinkapins are second, and maybe white oaks are first. Anyway, for the least amount of tannins. And of course, you don't see the use of acorn flour in anything like European cookbooks. So if you're trying to interpret what's happening with Native Americans and what they're using them, that's not as written down or recipe like. So I don't have any quick answers for you on the uses of acorn flour, except that they used it.
Franklin Horst is asking, are the Hessian journals in Old High German?
The originals, the ones that were, some of them are probably going to be in, I don't know. I can't answer that. All I know is that the ones that we're working on are already been translated into English. So, yes.
Go ahead.
He's
cool.
He's making things over there.
One more, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
Somebody was asking about more brewing episodes. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, more brewing episodes. The cookbooks are chock full of interesting drink recipes. Most of them are wine and other, metheglins and meads and that kind of thing. There isn't as much just straight on, beer kind of brewing because, well, beer is beer, and there weren't a lot of variations there that at least they talked about within the cookbooks. But hopefully we'll be able to do some more drink episodes. They tend to be longer form, though. I mean, it's not like one of those, oh, I can make this up in an hour and off she goes. So they're a lot more complicated and take a lot more resources and time to put together. The kind of episode that takes you 3 weeks to do instead of 3 hours. So
I would love to have some mead made. That would be awesome. But that's like 6 weeks.
yeah, there you go. So
The whole thing.
Yeah.
we'll speed it up.
Stream it.
Yeah, we
The
could.
mead for
Yeah,
mead.
3 weeks mead.
Do a
Sounds like
time
fun.
lapse.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming along in this live stream. We're experimenting here with the time. We were doing them on Wednesday. Aaron did the poll, and the results came back and said, do it on Friday, do it on Friday. So hopefully you enjoyed this Friday's version of the live stream. And I want to thank you guys for your just totally amazing support on our channel. I mean, the channel continues to grow by leaps and bounds. We broke the 400,000 subscriber barrier not very long ago, and it's like at 420 or something like now. So it's growing amazingly. All you guys are sharing our videos. Thank you so much for sharing our videos with your friends. I mean, there's such a huge back catalog of videos that people are really enjoying right now, going back and digging in those older videos. So thank you so much for sharing our videos. Again, people support us by going to our website and purchasing things. When you go and you purchase things with the Amazon link, that's supporting us too, because those are Amazon affiliate links, and we get a little tiny commission on that. So thank you for purchasing things through those links down in the description section, and again, and the wonderful Patreon supporters. Thank you again. Thank you so much for everything you do, and thanks for watching.